I wanted to share the homes that our family has lived in from the time that Paul and I got married. It definitely didn't always look the way that it looked now. I'm going to kind of take you as quickly as I can through the places that we have called home from the start to now. It started out in Northern California. We lived in a little town with about 160 people way up in the mountains in between the coast and the Central Valley, and we lived about 100 yards from the Trinity River, and it was a pretty great place to live. At that point, Paul was working. He would work 72 hours on, 72 hours off, and then 48 hours on, 48 hours off at a group home, and he was just about to start, I guess he was still a little ways away from starting grad school. At that point, he would be about to start working on his master's degree. When we got married, we moved into a trailer. It was not a new fancy trailer like you see a lot of YouTubers moving around in. It was not the sort of trailer that should be moved very often because it probably wouldn't hold up to constant moving that well. When it rained, there were leaks that you'd sometimes have to go up. Dad and Paul would go up and like retar the roof. There was a tarp, I believe, on the top of it. You'll be able to see in the picture. I'm not sure if the tarp's up there then. We had an air mattress. There were 2 twin beds and we had an air mattress, and it was rough in it. It had like a little tank that was attached to the toilet because we did not have running water more than a hose that was hooked up down there. And that was pretty much it. My grandparents lived at the top of the property, and then my grandparents had, I think, 20 or 40 acres, and then my parents had, I think, 3 acres, and then we were down towards the bottom of the property. And so that was where we had moved, and we were starting to save up as much as we could. At that point, we were planning on taking a big trip around the world. That's why we had moved up. Before that, we had been living down in the Bay Area. And so we moved up there just to save up, and then we found out we were expecting Sadie, and my dad and Paul built the cabin, and the cabin was 15 by 10 feet. It did not have running water. We either used the bathroom in the trailer, which was still there. The trailer was next to the cabin, although we were now sleeping in the cabin, which was a lot warmer or cooler. It had air conditioning and it had a little heater. It was easier to heat and better insulated, and just all around nicer to sleep in. And it had like a bed with a mattress that wasn't an air mattress, so it was much more comfortable. And Sadie's crib was down there when she was born. So when Sadie was born, she would be with us in the cabin. As I said, the cabin didn't have running water. We would use the showers and stuff up at my parents' house and do our laundry up there. So that was our second home when we were first starting out. Before Maggie was born, we moved into an apartment in town. At that point, we moved into Weaverville, and Weaverville is a small town in the Trinity Alps in Northern California. By then, Paul was working nights and he was going to school down in San Francisco on the weekends for graduate school. It was a 3-year program on the weekends. We had this little 2-story, 2-bedroom apartment that was really perfect for us when Maggie was born. We moved in a month before she was born. We loved that apartment until after we had been there for, actually I think we only lived in that apartment for about 6 months, but our neighbors were smoking a lot of pot, and the vents between our houses were connected apparently, and so the pot smoke was venting into the nursery room and into our room, and Sadie was having a really hard time breathing. She would like gasp and not be able to breathe with the smoke coming into their room. It was really scary. We thought she was asthmatic at that point. I think she just, I don't know, she didn't need to be breathing smoke as a 2-year-old. We would wake up to her like gasping to breathe when they were smoking, and her room would be completely full of smoke. We tried to ask the apartment to do something about it. We tried everything, and finally, ultimately, because nobody could do anything about it, and the apartment manager was like, sorry, there's smoke in your apartment, too bad, it shouldn't do that. And I was like, yeah, well it is. Our house is full of smoke from their apartments. You can see it coming in through the vents from the apartment next door. And they're like, not our problem. So we moved out. We moved into a trailer park, into a 3-bedroom trailer that was a lot bigger than our old trailer. It had a yard. It was in town. It was actually really near Paul's work. Paul was working at CVS at that point. First it was Long's, and then he was working at CVS nights. That was where he was working while he was in graduate school at that point. And we lived there while he finished graduate school and graduated. Then he started applying for law schools. After that, it was time for us to move to Florida. we moved down to Naples where we lived on campus in a 2-bedroom apartment, and it was 2 bedrooms with a little office, which was pretty nice. That was actually my craft room. At that point, and actually since before Maggie was born, I had opened up a Etsy shop that was doing okay, and it kept growing and growing. I was sewing and I was making jewelry, and I mean, it was never huge, but I think I had 700 or 800 orders altogether. I mean, it wasn't huge, but it helped us while he was in school. At night I would be up watching Doctor Who and sewing for hours and hours every single night. That was his first year of law school. After our first year of law school, and about halfway through our first year of law school, we decided that we definitely knew we didn't want to stay in Florida, and so he started applying to other schools. That summer he got an internship, and we went back to California for the internship with a judge in California. And while we were there, we found out that he got into Michigan State, and we decided that Michigan was someplace that we could see ourselves living. And we really wanted to go to a school in a place that we could see staying. And so we headed up to Michigan. We drove across the country. We found a place to live in Michigan. And one day we turned around, we went down to Florida, we got our stuff, we packed up, and we did all this we went down, we packed up, we turned around, and within 3 days we were moved in. And a few days later he started a class. It was really, really fast, and it was really stressful, and I was really pregnant. We did stop off on our way north at Disney World. The girls got to see Disney World one more time. Then we settled into our new home, and that was our home in Lansing. Paul really loved this house. I was always sick in this house. In Michigan, there's this thing that our realtor called a Michigan basement. I thought it was just our basement that flooded, because our basement would flood every spring. I thought that it was just this house, that the sewer would back up. It would flood from different sides, from both the sewer and from various sides of the house, and the basement would flood. And I didn't know that that happened. I should have, from the watermarks on the wall, but I didn't notice. I'd never been in a place where the basement flooded pretty regularly. And so the first time it happened, it just wiped out a ton of our stuff. And we had less stuff, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing, although I would have liked to be able to be more selective about it. Then it kept happening. And when we moved and we started looking at houses with our realtor, we started realizing that almost all the houses we went into, it was pretty clear that the basements flooded. And our realtor said, yeah, these are Michigan basements. Michigan basements flood. And I was like, no one told me that. I mean, I'd asked if this basement had flooded before, and I had been told absolutely not, it had never flooded before. But the point of that was I was always battling mold. I was always spraying bleach on this black mold that smelled like burnt toast. We were always sick. The kids had really bad allergies while we lived there. They had so many diagnosed allergies, diagnosed with an allergist. Sadie was allergic to peanuts. She was allergic to milk, wheat, green peas, and there's one I'm forgetting. Is it soy? No, not eggs. Dairy. And dairy. Patrick was allergic to dairy. James seemed to have a dairy allergy. He was never tested. We just took him off dairy because it made him sick and made him break out. And so he was never tested, but he probably would have tested as allergic to dairy too. Everyone had allergies while we lived there. We moved out, and within a month, the allergies were just gone. And I know the allergist said it was probably just a coincidence. There's no proof that mold and allergies are related, but I felt like we were sick the whole time we lived in that house. We moved out of the house a month before Tessie was born into this house. And I was really, really glad to get out before she was born. I was also really glad to get out of the city. Paul likes the city, and I like the country. It's not that Paul doesn't like the country. He does. He just likes being near things and how convenient it is. And I just love being in the country. I know that we're not really out in the country, and I wouldn't mind being farther out, but I understand that with the therapies that our girls have, it makes more sense for us to be closer to things, and so it's a sacrifice. But I will take this for me as being in the country, being in basically a country town, a farming town, even though we're really close to the road. I'll take being next to a cornfield, even though we're in a neighborhood and not way out there on one of the little farms that we looked at, because we looked at a lot of little farms that were amazing prices. But we settled for a newer house that had a basement that was finished and a ton of room to play and a great backyard. We decided that this was the best thing for our family. Honestly, the fact that it was a newer house after what we'd gone through with all the molds and everything with our old house was a major contributing factor. When I saw this house, I knew that it was really unlikely we were going to have to deal with those things that we dealt with the old house. I didn't want to deal with that again. We looked at some beautiful old 100-year-old farmhouses with beautiful barns, and I wanted that so much, but I was just a little bit afraid to get into that after what we dealt with our old house, which was built in 1925 and was cute and fun, and I didn't want to go through old house problems again. That is how we got from our first house and our little trailer to our cabin to our apartments, from California to Florida to Michigan, and to where we are now with our family and 5 kids next to a cornfield in a house that sometimes feels too small but is definitely way bigger than where we started out. That is it for today. If you like this video, I'd love it if you'd give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in all things autism, which is what we usually talk about around here, I'd love it if you'd hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.